Welcome to That's My Therapy. I'm Alicia Belzer, a master's student in adventure-based counseling and experiential education.
I'm Amanda Reedy, a clinical social worker working as a mental health therapist. Yes, our voices are the same. Try your best.
We are sisters and mental health professionals who spend our days chatting about what helps us grow, heal, and connect. We believe therapy is a great tool for healing. However, we hope to demystify what healing can look like. As in our experience, humans are intuitive, creative, and determined when it comes to caring for themselves.
Each episode, we will get curious about therapeutic things that aren't traditional talk therapy. We will break down why those things might be helpful from a clinical lens. Let's get it.
Welcome back to That's My Therapy. We just finished up our Tree Fort experience, which was delightful, and we are back at it with another Ask a Therapist. And today with us we have Mimi Fetzer,
resident best friend of me, Amanda Reedy, and very recent new grad from her own social work program. So a big congrats to Mimi.
Thanks, Panda. Yes, I officially walk next week on Saturday, May 6th, and I'm excited to be like you and hopefully help people throughout the world.
If anyone can do it, it's this lass here, because she's the gym. Yeah, salt of the earth. Good people right here.
You're too kind. This was my third try at becoming a therapist. Yes, I've been to 3 different universities trying to get a counseling and therapy degree, so this one finally stuck.
Yeah, and then you did it beautifully, and now we get to welcome you as our peer.
Yay.
We are here today to talk about what is your therapy, but yeah, so tell us a little bit about what you're going to talk about today.
Well, I would like to start from the beginning. So, once upon a time, I saw an Oprah episode where she showed the meat industry, and I was like, that feels a certain way, and I was like, I need to become a vegetarian. But I was very concerned about doing it wrong, so I went on to Google University and saw that there was so much information about food and nutrition, and I was like, I need to make this my job. So fast forward a few years and I became a registered dietitian, which for those of you who are unfamiliar, we help people formally achieve well-being with food and nutrition. And I was working in the field and I was noticing that I was trying to help people achieve well-being using, broccoli and salt reduction. And they were like, yeah, that's great and all, but I don't really know where I'm going to live tomorrow, or I am really depressed, and so thinking about food is kind of tricky. So that's what got me into the counseling field. But I noticed that there's a lot of narrative around self-care, and how you find that is through intention and doing stuff that you enjoy. And so something that I found that I enjoyed beyond the bubble baths and candles for self-care is cooking food and really just nourishing, no pun intended, what it's like to get your hands dirty, experiment, and then look at something that you've created, and not only look at it, but also put it in your mouth afterwards.
And it feeds your body.
Yes, you're nourished afterwards and content. And at first I didn't even think that this was something that I was doing for self-care. I just thought, we eat. Everyone eats. And it wasn't until I was noticing that I'd have a really hard day, and maybe I was on the internet and I saw something of that would be really good to create and put my own spin on it. And I started noticing how I'd look forward to cooking after school or work, or I look forward to sharing whatever I created with friends and loved ones. And also, it wasn't something that I feasibly could monetize either, which is important because I do think that a lot of self-care activities, when you're creating something, it's also like, oh, should I start selling this or turn this into a business? And that just wasn't feasible for me. So it was good that it had those parameters as well, of like, it could only be just for me, not others.
What's your like relationship throughout childhood with just food and cooking, and is that something that was important in your family, or did that come later as you kind of discovered, oh, I want to be able to cook really tasty vegetarian meals?
Yeah, I that's an important question, because I do think that cooking was something that I really bonded with my mom over. I remember as kids, we grew up not having, we weren't flush with cash by any means, so my mom got really creative about what can I do with these two young kids that is entertaining and also special. And so some of the things that we did was we would create dough animals with like pizza dough, and we would use things like sprinkles or different food items and make little creatures out of dough. Or sometimes when it was raining, it was our tradition to throw a giant blanket over our kitchen table and camp out under the table with chicken noodle soup and grilled cheese. And so when I think back of my childhood and food, it reminds me a lot of my mom. And my mom also is very entwined with my vegetarian experience, because she was so worried that I would get unhealthy or that I wouldn't be nourished enough. And so she went full-blown Pinterest and would always be like, oh, I found this recipe, I'm gonna make it for you, do you want to do it with me? And so even though she was worried about me being vegetarian, she really just eased into it. And I think that meant a lot to me, having a mom that was supportive in that way and also hoping to share in it with me as well.
I didn't know that about your mom. That's so beautiful that she really embraced it. It was very different from my experience coming out as a vegetarian. Yeah.
I came out as gay, and I remember thinking to myself, at least I'm not vegan, because they've been giving Manda shit for about 10 more years than me.
It wasn't always rainbows and sunshine. Yeah. I remember we went to a family gathering at someone's cabin, and my mom brought this giant tin of what looked like cookies, and I ate one, and I was like, wow, this is gross. And I noticed my mom was just staring at me, like pretty intense eye contact. And then she was like, that has meat in it. Almost like, are you sure you're vegetarian? Because you're eating meat right now. So
burst into like, flames.
Mom!
What were they? They weren't
meat cookies?
They were like meatloaf cakes or something. I don't know. They were gross. My mom's recipes weren't always winners, and I think that really encouraged me to have winner recipes more often than not. Yeah. But yeah, I know she wasn't happy about it either, but my mom is also a big supporter of like, if this is something you have faith in and if it was in your values, then I'll support you while also not liking it. And then she kind of came around after it was sticking for years and years. Yeah. But yeah. But I think also for me, food connects me with her in that way, because for the listeners, she passed away from cancer. And so at the end of her life, there wasn't a lot she could do. She was a really active person, but then just the whole cancer process really took it out of her. So often how we would connect is I would cook dinner for us in the kitchen, and she'd sit in the counter and chat with me or read out loud the Harry Potter books. And I like to think that her last words to me were, let's go into the kitchen and let's cook, sweetheart. And it happened to be 3 a.m. So I was like, Mom, we can't really do that. But I think of those words of how that's how her and I connected, and that's what she remembered me by, as us being in the kitchen and cooking together. So cooking also reminds me of her in those ways too, of how we connected. But yeah.
Well, you're painting such a broad picture for me of why it is so meaningful. What have you made recently?
I made some dill scones, and I was so we went on a trip this weekend, and I was so excited about these scones that I made that when we picked up our friend, I literally had these hot scones in my lap, and I turned around with a scone in a napkin slathered with butter, and I was like, here, try this. Don't worry about crumbs. I don't care. It's about the scones.
In the compliments.
Yes.
So keep 'em coming.
Yes. I do struggle with making food that is good enough, or the quote, that was the best I've ever had. And when I don't get that, I'm like, damn it, try harder, more salt. But yeah, I have this memory of Amanda and I went camping, and we made sweet potato tacos, and I threw the sweet potatoes onto the coals, and it got infused with burnt flavor.
It was just so smoky because the fire was it was just smoky.
Yeah, and that stuck with me forever.
Oh,
Of
no.
I can't ever make smoky sweet potato tacos again. So now every time I go camping, I'm coming with prepared stuff so that I avoid smoked potatoes.
Smoky potatoes.
Of course, she cooks for me all the time, and I am the person this is the best thing I've ever tried in my whole life.
Amanda has replicated meals that Mimi has made for her, and has actively been like, well, Mimi does it this way, and when Mimi does this, and then at the very end, she's like, it was pretty good, but it was better when Mimi did it.
I didn't know that.
And it's always
a wizard, though, too, because she doesn't need a recipe. One time she just went into my kitchen because she was babysitting my daughter, and I was at work one day, and she just made this pasta without all the ingredients in my fridge. That was so haphazardly. I'm not a food planner or prepper at all. And then she had to leave before I even got home, but there's this pasta there, and then later that night I finally got to have some, and I was like, this is so good. There's no way that this was in my fridge. You just...
People who cook like that, where it's connected to their identity. My fiance, I feel like Sarah is like that too, and you're making me empathize a little bit more. I think she loves how much I love her meals, but I've never really understood why is this so important for you? We had an almost relationship ending event where she made pierogi at my place before we lived together, and she thought she was putting garlic in it, but she was putting garlic salt in it. So long story short, these pierogi were unreasonably salty. It was pretty uneatable. Inedible is also the word.
I wasn't gonna correct it.
And I was like, it's chill, let's just go get a pizza. And she was like, why would they put garlic and salt together? They belong separate, as God intended.
Oh.
Keep them separate. But yeah, I think cooking with her family, and then also she studies farmland protection and agriculture. So similar to you, kind of broadening her knowledge about what food is and what it brings people, and how important it is to just our society operating as a whole. She hates wasting food. Our fridge to a snacker is probably a hell on earth, because everything just needs to be put together and made. But I think it's what I love about her, and based on what you're describing of your experience with cooking, it's an identity.
Yeah. I love learning. I'm trying, because you're describing your experience of like you're at school or work and you're excited to go home and cook, and that feels so foreign to me. Like I
agree.
I can so not connect with that feeling, but it's so helpful to learn what other people find as valuable, you know?
Yeah, so far we've heard about people who like running.
Yeah.
And cooking, and that's something that Amanda and I...
Yeah, like my brain just can't neurologically just seem to make that jump of like, I look really forward to not being hungry, but I think this is my issue too, is I don't know how to engage in process, especially when it comes to food, because I'm just hungry and I only want the feeling of hunger to be gone. So it's hard for me to like really put a lot of effort on a daily basis to like eat food. So tell me about the process on like, how do you feel before, how do you feel during, and then how do you feel after?
Well,
in your body and your heart. Yeah.
I think something important to note too is that I've always been a smaller person, and so as I got older and I encountered more people who used food as a way to look a certain way, I think that I got lucky in that food was always a way to either nourish your body or engage in art. So I do want to say that I've never had that of like, oh, I need to eat this certain diet to look a certain way.
My body so that I have value in this society. Yeah.
Yes, and I think that has really allowed for me to achieve the relationship with food that I have when I look at food. And yes, ironically, I am a dietitian, so I do see food as a way of like improving your health, or it can be a way of harming your health. But at the same time, food first for me is a way to enjoy what's on this earth. And so when I'm thinking about like the before process, I do have those days too of where I'm like, I just need to eat, whether that's a granola bar or whatever, that's fine. But there are those moments where I see something, and I also do a lot of vegan cooking as well. And so I'm like, I see this as a puzzle or a challenge of how can I take chicken and waffles, which is laden with non-vegan food items, and turn this into a vegan thing. So I get excited about that puzzle part and figuring things out. And then during, I am aware of like the food chemistry, and so you have to have patience. You also have to consider of like, okay, will these flavors taste good together? Will this highlight each other, or will it mute this flavor? And I really enjoy getting to think about that. And then the end result is having something that I'm proud of or excited for, and just that ritual piece too is the important after of like, oh, what movie am I gonna watch while I eat my vegan chicken and waffles? Or am I gonna hang out with friends, and are we gonna play a board game, and am I gonna get to watch my friends stuff their face while they're creaming me in Catan or whatever, or Catan for those of you who call it that. But, yeah, and so there's just so much more related to it than food, of like togetherness and family, and ritual, that it goes beyond the food for me, and that's what I appreciate about it. But I will say that also can create some challenges as well. So I have a Texas family, and they are very happy with, in my opinion, mediocre ribs and just salty things. And so that's always tricky for me when I'm like, this could be made so elevated, or we could go to these restaurants that curate ingredients from this specific place or pair these things. Like, why aren't we doing this? And they don't get me either. They're like, this can be good the way it is, and that can be enough And so that's something I'm working on still, of allowing food to be enough as is and not need to have this like art or magic behind it. And recognizing that it's someone else's journey with food, but I'm like, come on my journey.
Well, you're really selling your journey right now. Like, as you're talking, I'm called, like, thinking about how Amanda and I were raised with food. Grocery shopping, cooking was a chore. Eating food was a difficult process for our mom of just...
And I get it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's like she was a mom of 3, and we were a very busy family, and, you know, she worked, and it was somehow her responsibility to get dinner on the table every night. Like, now we recognize the gendered bullshit and all of that, too.
Yeah, and that it had to be nutritious, and it had to have
And, you
these
know,
qualities.
everything came from a box. Every single thing was pretty much, you know, a frozen or processed. And, you know, we all lived and we're all fine and healthy, but it definitely, you know, food for us was definitely about shutting these kids up who are hungry, who, you know, they came from volleyball and gymnastics and, like, practices and then, like, just getting on with life because it was busy. So not being raised in a culture where you slow down with food, definitely it impacts me now, because when I'm hungry, I expect that I should be able to eat within the 15 minutes of feeling the first sensation of hunger.
Right, yeah. Immediate gratification.
Yeah.
Immediate need.
Yeah. And it's definitely like we've grown out of some of that. And I know what it's like when you put a lot of intention in food, and you can taste the difference. You can feel the difference. It just seems for me like so hard to maintain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have mixed feelings about it, but when I had a really busy year in Salt Lake City, we did meal kits, and it was genuinely the first time I had like gone through a process of cooking a meal that wasn't like huevos rancheros or bean, like, you know, those
Frozen chicken tendies.
Yeah, like 3 ingredients. Like, yeah, I've heated food for myself, but I have not.
Yeah.
Like, and it got to a point where I was looking forward to it, where it became this ritual of being in our little kitchen.
Yeah.
And preparing this, and it was helpful that it was simplified down on these little cards, and it was hard to mess up.
Yeah.
But now I'm just handed 3 delicious meals a day.
I know. And I think you forget how good you have it.
I mean, I'm pretty outstandingly grateful every day. It's like,
I think you could crank it up a little bit. No one else is doing that. She deserves.
That's true.
The pedestal that we will boost her up on.
Yeah.
My spouse did say last summer when I had summer break, he mentioned, he's like, I'm so excited, you're gonna cook for me all day, and he's like, he loves the meals that I make. And then I was kind of like still battling with this idea of who am I without work or school. I was just sitting there and I was like, I'm feeling uninspired, and I found how cooking is so tied to my mood too, of like when I'm not feeling emotionally well, engaging in food art per se is very difficult. So unfortunately, sorry Corey, he did not get some impressive meals until I pulled myself out of it. But yeah, so
yeah. Do you feel like in order to cook, then you have to be in a mood, or is there sometimes, do you believe in the process of cooking when you don't want to? Do you know what I mean? Like, I know I'm feeling really shitty, but I believe that if I go to the kitchen and I start cutting ingredients, it's going to connect me to my hands, to my body, to my feelings. It's going to be 30 minutes of like attention, and at the end I'm going to feel differently.
Yes, and that's a really good point of like, if I'm not feeling well, then I won't cook elaborate meals for myself. But like, for instance, this weekend, as I said, we were on a trip, and I knew that I was going to have food for people, or I wanted to have food for people. So I forced myself to make these bomb-ass dill scones, and then in the process of like measuring, asking myself how I can bring out that umami flavor, or whatever it's called, I started noticing I'm feeling better by doing this, but I had to have something forcing me to engage in it, because initially I was not inspired. So I think that's why community is so important, and why I go back and forth on the Instagram thing on your food. Because on the one hand, like, if you're being forced by that allure of posting it on Instagram, and it's getting you doing and involved the things that bring you joy or feel therapeutic, then I'm like, by all means, do it. But if it then becomes like, oh, this is something that I have to do because it's my livelihood, I'm like, oh, bummer sauce for you.
Amanda and I have pretty much completely evolved past the expectation of having internal motivation for anything.
No, we talk about this all the time. It's overrated. Let's stop pretending.
No, engage in processes that make you do what's good for you.
Yeah. Use other people. Use things that help you. The idea that you have to be so intrinsically, internally capable of doing something is ridiculous. And then every time you don't do it, you feel like a failure.
No. Invite someone over so you have to clean your house.
Exactly.
Plan an event so you have to make dill scones.
Invite someone else to go for a walk with you. Set up a time. Go to a workout class. Tell someone that you're going to meet them there.
Yeah. If you have ADHD like me, any habit that you try to develop for yourself, you will have a 100% relapse rate. It is guaranteed. But accepting that it is not an internal value of yours to continue those habits, it's a lot easier to tap into your resources and just start again, like you will have to do endlessly.
Right. I like, Mimi she's such a good person, but we say this about Mimi. I don't know I say this about myself, I should say. I rarely know how to show up and be helpful, like add something to a situation. I'm like, I'll show up, my presence is going to have to be enough. I'll be endlessly supportive, like, please, I'm here for you. I'm not going to bring a meal. I'm probably not going to bring the things that you need. But I'm like, no, my presence, I'm a shower upper. In my mind, I believe that's true. Mimi has the beautiful and unique talent of showing up and being incredibly, like, helpful.
Yeah.
Like, when I was studying for my LCSW test, she just brought over these delicious, like, walnut tacos that she made, and I think about them, I don't know, once a week maybe. And I look at the jar of walnuts in my cabinet and I remember her tacos, and I just wish I had her tacos. But I just like that food can be a way that we express love for other people, and that feels really good. And I like the idea that she's in her kitchen thinking about me. Oh no, I'm gonna cry.
Do it.
No.
Do it.
You can't make me. Thinking about me studying for my test.
It's okay.
And then she drops it off. She doesn't even tell me. I was like out for a walk. It was the only like 20-minute break I took for the day. She drops it off. She was like, there's a cooler with food and this, keep studying, you got it. It's just like, that's really nice.
Yeah, if you ever weren't able to eat, I don't know what I would do, because I love you a lot, and sometimes it's hard to know how to show it, and so, yeah, please
to me
keep
specifically. Because I'm so easy if you hand me food. I'll clearly am moved to tears when someone's like, I've thought of you and I cooked food. I'm like, that's all I've ever wanted.
We've already expressed that it's deeper than that, though.
Yeah.
It's definitely deeper, but also it's like that is something that I think about, of like, how can I show this person that I love them? And food is one that comes up first a lot, or
Yeah.
food's one that I get excited about if I know I can show someone love through food. And if I can't, it's a different kind of puzzle, and not one that I look forward to because I don't know how to solve it yet. But
Right.
yeah. So don't stop eating. Stay hungry.
Always. I'm hungry now. I'm like already thinking about let's go to the cafe next right after this.
Also, when I think of the gifts that I have received in my life, the most special are always the ones that have been either made or like felt through. Like there was a process by which this person engaged in the gift and then gave it to me. And food is like a really kind of simple and beautiful way to like intentionally put your hands on something that you're giving to someone else. It feels very intimate.
Yeah.
If you are listening and you are someone who makes food for other people, and no one has like hyped you up recently, please let us be the ones to say that you make this world go round and make people feel so loved. And you make occasions and experiences so much more special. That fort you made with your mom is more special because of the grilled cheese and chicken noodle soup.
Yeah.
Every holiday is made more special by being so stuffed and having to lay down on the floor with your family.
Yeah, so much of our rituals are food based, and I do think we have become more and more disconnected from food. Like people ask the question like, would you never want to have to eat again or never have to sleep again?
Oh man, I love both of those.
Yeah, like for me, I'd be like, oh, I'd sleep every night whether I had to or not.
Yeah,
but if I could choose to not eat and only eat when I like want to, like when I'm with other people and it feels like community, I would choose that 100 times over. I would, and if like you can eat whenever you want and you can sleep, I would sleep every single night. I would never miss a night of sleep.
Yeah,
I would,
Yeah, but I would miss.
I'd miss food because I'm upset that I have to be intentional. How many times a day? I have to plan a meal. I have to like solve a need. This is interesting. Well, I don't think I like to always be in my body and take care of myself, and food is a way that I have.
Rarely.
Right. Yeah.
Why do you think you love sleeping so much?
Oh yeah. Right. I was like, why wouldn't you want to sleep? I'm like, what are you gonna do?
One time I never have to think about myself.
I'm noticing some things. Yeah.
It reminds me of when Amanda and I went on a trip together, and we were playing the Get to Know You questions game, and we were saying how if you had to lose any of your senses, which one would it be? And I stick my foot in my mouth a lot, but I just blurted out, I want to lose my eyesight. And everyone else was like, Mimi, what about your sense of smell? And of course I dug my heels in. I was like, no, I wouldn't want to lose that because... And I thought about it, and I'm like, oh, because then I wouldn't be able to taste food very well.
Yeah, you're like, food is everything. I was like, what about driving a car?
And I was like, Corey can drive me.
I'm like, Corey will take care of me.
Corey will drive me to all the restaurants that I want to go
like,
to.
as long as I got a mouth that experiences pleasure, I'm going to keep eating.
Exactly. I don't need to see the fork coming into my pie hole. I can taste it.
I can feel it in my bones. I think as you gain a more intimate relationship with food, like, I don't know, you engage with it in different ways.
Yeah, what I get so mad when you hear so much information out there about how food is so important and like cooking good meals and taking time, and I feel furious inside because I was like, well, like the grind and capitalism doesn't let me do this. I've got like 30 minutes for a lunch, and I'm like rushing out the door, and I'm not getting home till 6:30, and you want me to cook a whole meal, and I'm like, well, I'm not eating till 8.
Well, and not only that, but the fast food that is available, I've noticed it's very devoid of the experience and the labor of love piece of it.
Yeah.
It almost is like it's something that you unwrap, and where that used to be a treat for me as a kid of like, oh, on Sundays we got motherfucking Burger King, and I was like, hell yes.
Yeah.
But now it's like, oh, I get Burger King because I only have 30 minutes, to get from point A to point B. And so even the process of unwrapping something isn't as fun as it used to be.
Yeah.
Because that's taken away from it too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm realizing that I thought I had untangled from the lies of productivity, and I think I have in a lot of ways, but I think food still is a hang up for me.
I find like when Sarah cooks, it gives her capacity. Like you were saying, if you don't cook for a while because you're like emotionally or mentally hindered from like engaging in that activity, it like self spirals down and she feels worse and worse and worse. And like that's her regulating practice. Is cooking. So yeah, I think you and I, Amanda, have associated cooking with this fast-paced, productive chore.
With inconvenience.
Yeah.
That my body needs something.
I also do eat in like 2 seconds. Eating with Mimi, she's like having a conversation and she'll just be talking and she takes like 1 bite an hour and we're sharing a meal and I'm like trying to listen to her and my eyes just dart down to the shared appetizer every few minutes.
Because eating in our family was a competitive event. The clash of spoons on the molten lava cake at Chili's.
Right, you got like one.
Was volatile. Yeah. Something that I'm noticing as we're talking to Mimi, Kat, the artist at Tree Fort, is like, I kind of want to add something to our definition of what therapy is. And therapy should never be something you get done. Like, it should not be an aspect of productivity in your day.
Sure.
Self-care should not be a productive act in your day. And when I think about all these acts that are true therapy and that are intentional and promote growth and understanding, they are activities that make you slow down.
Yeah.
I'm finding that interesting because for the first time I got involved in a group, and I've led therapy groups before throughout my education and work, but I've never been a group member before, so I decided to get involved with the grief group at our school, and I was finding that I was leaving the grief group feeling very drained and like it wasn't really helping me much, and I was just leaving feeling more angry about these memories that I thought I had processed. And now that you said that, I'm noticing, I think it was because I was treating it of like, okay, if I'm going to become a therapist, I have to know what grief or what the group process feels like on the other side. And then it ended up, I was monetizing it or trying to
check a box of like,
yes,
did grief group done.
Yes.
If I want to feel better about this by next year, I should
exactly
do all
But
of
then
these.
you find that like, oh, you know what feels the most healing on my like grief journey is remembering what it was like to cook with my mom.
Exactly.
And
that's something I've always valued and enjoyed about my relationship to food is it's something that I get to do. It's something that feels good. And same with therapy, like something that I get to do, and maybe I'm bawling in the moment, but afterwards it's like, wow, I just nourished my soul, like chicken soup for the soul, therapy style.
One helpful thing of language-wise that you can shift for people, one, I like to joke, like, don't shit all over yourself. Or no masturbating. And one helpful language that whenever you feel a should come in, just replace it with a could. I could cook tonight, or I could go out. Like, it's okay to make a different choice, but there's like space and not a judgment in it. And should is so shame-based. And could is like, oh, I have space or freedom to make a decision on if this is right for me in the moment.
Yeah, and the shoulds are real easy to get lost in with food of like, I should follow this diet because, I've heard a lot of baloney around food of like things, this could cause cancer or this could cause this certain type of disease. And I've bought into it in the past. Having a family member who had cancer, you really can drown in all of the possibly true information, but most likely misinformation. And I think that treating food more as self-care has really helped serve as a life preserve of getting me out of that drowning feeling and getting me back into being like, what do I enjoy about this? What about this makes me happy? Versus what are those shoulds? Or what is this bad relationship with food that is really not serving me or making these final moments with, my mom really meaningful. And I think that it was really, there was at one point where I was like, oh, Mom, you have to eat this raw food diet. It's completely healing. And she said, you know what, Memes? I just want to have hot food. And I need for you to be okay with that. And it was like this light bulb moment of like, oh yeah, like these could possibly be your last moments, on this earth. And if you want to eat cooked food, good. If you want to eat a donut, good, because that's making you happy. And I'm thankful she taught me that lesson about food can, and I'm going to should on this, should be joy. And I love her for teaching me that.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. And yeah,
let's go share a meal together.
It seems like we should cook it, but I am hungry now. So
Hey, I think
we learned the lesson.
To restaurants
we could
too,
and we don't have to. So
we'll go and enjoy someone else's labor of love and appreciate it with more capacity now.
All right, y'all. Stay hungry and stay close.
Stay close.
Stay close.
Thanks for listening to That's My Therapy. If you are seeking resources to care for your mental health, a good place to start is Psychology Today's list of qualified practitioners in your area, or by contacting your insurance provider to get a list of in-network clinicians.
If you are feeling suicidal or needing immediate help, you can reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline by dialing or texting 988.